Good evening. I'd like to call to order the November 2nd public hearing for the City of Tampa's Architectural Review Commission. Welcome, everyone. My name is Zachary Greco, Chair of the Commission. If you're here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. Commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff will then present the staff report, and we will then ask the public for any comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will be allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal. Public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make the decisions based upon the City Ordinance, Chapter 27 of the City Zoning Code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior standards, Historic Preservation Development Review comments, HPDRC, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones. And at this point, I will ask my fellow commissioners, starting on my right, to introduce themselves.
Shauna Boyd, interior designer.
Susan Klausmith, architect.
Stephen Sutton, architect.
We're also joined tonight by city staff, Ron Vila, Beverly Jewisak, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel. Independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones. For the meeting minutes of October 5th and 7th, 2020 public hearing, would a commissioner like to make a motion to put those into record?
I move to approve the meeting minutes from Monday, October 5th, 2020, and Wednesday, October 7th.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackel.
I second the motion.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Ron Vila. I'm staff with Historic Preservation. Under announcements, in your packets, we have the staff reviews from the month of October. This is just so you could follow what the staff is doing, and you have a understanding of how busy we are at times. The second announcement is we will be holding a meeting on Wednesday, November 4th. We have a full agenda for that date. And the last announcement is that we had a vacancy last month with Ashley Dickerson leaving the board. We thank her for her time. Her service was up, and she held the vice chair position. So in concert with the Robert's Rules of Order, we need to fill that position. Tonight, we could do an election if the commission is ready to move forward with that. If somebody would nominate somebody for the vice chair position. Had a vacancy last month with Ashley Dickerson leaving the board. We thank her for her time.
Mr. Sutton, Commissioner Sutton, do you have a question?
Service was
No, I
up,
do not.
and she held the vice chair position. So in concert with the Robert's Rules of Order, we need to fill that position. Tonight, we could do an election if the commission is ready to move forward with that. If somebody would nominate somebody for the vice chair position.
Well, unless someone else wants to nominate you, that's fine.
I nominate Susan Klausmith.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And then we just need to have a vote on the, are there any other nominations?
If we could get a second for the motion that's on the floor.
Yeah, there was a second.
Okay. And a vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And then we just need to have a vote on are there any other nominations? Okay, Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office.
Motion that's on the floor.
At this time, Commissioners, can you state whether or not there are any conflicts of interest regarding the items that are listed on the agenda?
I have none.
No.
Congratulations.
None.
None.
Thank you. Additionally, will any of the commissioners please state on the record whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
None.
None.
Thank you so much. At this time, Commissioners, can you state whether or not there are any...
So under continuations, we have two reflected. which is ARC 19-355 for the address of 407 Gladys Street. It's being continued to the December 7th, 2020 public hearing at 6 p.m. And the second continuation is ARC 20-364 for the address of 310 East Ross Avenue, which is also continued to the December 7th, 2020 public hearing at 6 p.m. One motion would suffice for both of those continuations.
I move to continue case number ARC 19-355 for 407 Gladys Street to the December 7th, 2020 public hearing, as well as ARC 20-364 for the property at 310 East Ross Avenue, also to the December 7th, 2020 public hearing.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
At this time, we're ready for the swear-in. Everybody that wishes to testify, please stand up and raise your right hand. Ms. Juzak will swear us in.
Public hearing, as well as ARC 20-364 for the property at 310 East Ross Avenue, also to
I do.
All in favor? Aye.
The first case this evening
Motion passes.
is ARC 20-387 for the address of 203 West Vern Street. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. There is a contributing structure there dated back to 1901. The current underlying zoning is R01. Their certificate of appropriateness is a request for demolition of a contributing structure. The contributing structure has approximately 4,000 square feet. If you look on page 3 of your staff report, there's some past action there. There's some history to this site. The owners have been working with staff since February 2018 to try to rehabilitate this structure. And we have been in concert with them the whole time moving forward. It seems like every time that they tried to move forward in a positive direction, there were some challenges that would be addressed this evening through their report. There's some history to this. On page 3 also is the application of standards, which is chapter 27-116 F1 through 3, which addresses the burden of proof if the structure could be relocated to a different site within the historic district, and the economic hardship. Through their presentation, all of these items should be addressed. Staff has reviewed this, and they had a complete application. It was emailed to all the commissioners prior to the public hearing. In working with staff, their group had put it in a different format, so it's easier for you to follow this evening. The information is on everybody's desk, and I believe it's going to be something that you can follow along with as well. Having said that, I'm going to do a brief photo presentation. Staff has reviewed this, and they had a complete application. It was emailed to all the commissioners prior. This is starting with the Sanborn map from 1929. Property in question is highlighted in the shaded green area. There is an alley that runs to, I'm going to call the east of the property. The north arrow is up, and you see some of the fabric that remains, and then you see some of the fabric that has been removed. And I'll show an aerial now that you'll see 3, 4, 5 bay shores over here, and one bay shore are some high rises that are in the immediate vicinity of the subject site. That runs to, I'm going to call the east of the property, the north. This is the overhead shot that I spoke about. This is the property in question here. You see some of the historic buildings that remain, some that have been removed in the infill. You see this is 3, 4, 5 Bay Shore, and then as you go down Bay Shore Boulevard, there's some additional high-rises that flank Bay Shore Boulevard. I'm just going to briefly show some of the pictures of the structure. This is the front elevation. The representatives will show a complete presentation to include many photos that'll get deeper into the request. This is the front, and then this is the west side. As you look at the east side that abuts the alley, you see some of the zip board that was present and trying to do the rehabilitation as it moved forward. Representatives will show a complete presentation to include many photos. Just the condition of the structure here. Into the request. This is the front, and then this is the west. And just the last photo, as you look at just how it sits, and these were just taken a couple months ago. At this time, I'll introduce Sean is the agent for the project, and he's going to address the board at this time. Just the condition of the structure here. And just the last photo.
Could you state and spell your name?
How it sits, and these were just taken a
Thank
couple
you.
months ago. At this time, I'll introduce Sean, who's the agent for the project, and he's going to address the board at this time.
Is that better? Is that better? All right. I can be loud, so I'll try. Again, Eric Page with Schutzen Bowen, legal counsel for the applicant. The applicant is actually Piney Woods, Florida, Roman numeral 7 LLC. The name may or may not be familiar to you, but Brian Katz, the principal of Piney Woods, has done a lot in Tampa since moving here about 10 years ago, including the really nice headquarters that is on Platt Street, about halfway between Howard and downtown, which used to just be basically a dilapidated area. He has also, over the last few years, rehabilitated 5 other properties that are in the very close proximity to the subject property. In each of those instances, he purchased the property with the intent to renovate it, to improve it, and to maintain it, and he did that every one of those times. Unfortunately, this has been an instance where, with the same intent to purchase, renovate, and improve, and after spending about 22 months in an effort to do that, as Mr. Vila alluded to, and also spending about $155,000 on professionals for design, architecture, construction, etc., it got to the point where, after peeling back some of the layers, as you can see from the pictures from Mr. Vila, it was evident this was not a structure that was going to be able to be saved. We actually will hear from our structural engineer, Mr. Kevin Kemp, of Wilson Structural Consultants. There is a report from Mr. Kemp in your binder of materials. You'll also hear from Sean Luttrell and Philip Linzen of Luttrell Architecture. All of these folks have been involved for an extended period of time. I've been consulted here and there on things, so I don't want to eat up your time listening to me. But the client has, I can represent because I have been involved since approximately the purchase of the property. The client has spent extensive resources, time, and money in an effort to rehabilitate this property, has worked with Mr. Vila and his folks for months and months, and is now here because it's at a point where the building is simply in such a state of disrepair and deterioration due to the neglect of prior owners that there's nothing else to do at this point but move forward with the demolition. So I'm going to turn it over to Sean, and I will be happy to answer any legal questions you have at any point.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'll leave my mask on if you guys prefer that, otherwise I can take it off. I prefer to take it off if that's not a bother.
It's your
That's fine.
preference.
So Eric obviously provided a pretty good intro as far as the background of Piney Woods, Florida. What we really wanted to showcase here is that they have made a very started effort to go through this process of rehabilitation. He's already mentioned they spent $155,000 on not carrying costs, but on actual architecture, engineering, and construction, and 22 months of time to rehabilitate it. In 2019, it got to a point where the cost just escalated to a point where it just was so far out of the realm of reality that it made absolutely no sense to try to continue down this path of rehabilitation. When I say that, I kind of go back to the original appraisal. When he purchased the property in 2017, he had an intent to spend $200,000 to $400,000 on the rehabilitation. That was based on previous rehabilitations that he had done, not only on that street, but on the street behind it, so in the very near vicinity. As they got into construction and selected demolition, that $200,000 to $400,000 that the appraiser said $400,000 would be out of line with, with economic reasoning, but it jumped to $800,000. Eventually, as more things were uncovered, it jumped to $1.2 million. So we know from past experience we could design and build a project in this location for probably $700,000. So this is, far exceeding the reality of any type of return on investment within the lifetime of the client, for sure. I want to go into the application of standards. So if you're looking at this book, we're on basically page 7. So we're looking at 27-116. And we've kind of, I don't want to go through every item because we only have 30 minutes. I don't want to keep you longer than we need to be here. But we have consciously gone through and spoke to every item within the code. One of the things as we get to item E, 1E, whether the demolition is justified as an economic hardship, I think that is pretty evident, as you'll see within this document. Relying on ourselves as architects, we also have a historic preservation architect who's looked at the property, Ken Garcia, who's not here right now, I believe. But Ken's looked at it as well. For many of you probably know Abel Garcia from previous years. They are one of the most well-respected historic preservation architects in the community. Philip Lenz and myself, as well as our structural engineer, have looked at this and determined this is clearly an economic hardship to try to bring this building back to its original stature. And I'm going to go through some of this very quickly, and then as you guys have questions at the end, we're happy to come back to them and speak to them in more detail. Looking at the list of exhibits, I kind of wanted to go through and just kind of explain quickly, because I don't know how much time you guys had to look through the document. If you were just handed it right now, you probably haven't had a lot of opportunity. But we did go through this extensively in the meeting with staff last week. They decided, hey, it would be nice if you kind of formatted it in a way that matches our code. So we systematically turned everything around and organized it and structured it so that you can go through it and understand if you're used to looking at chapter 27-116. Everything is answered in this document. So as we go through the evidence and the exhibits, obviously it's related to the tabs. The estimate of the cost of the proposed demolition is pretty straightforward. I don't think that's the most important factor here. Tab 2 gets to one of the most important items, which is the structural engineer's report. And in just a few minutes, I'll introduce Kevin Kemp of Wilson Structural to talk more about his report. Estimated market value, estimate of an architect, that comes down to, we had a construction manager involved in this project. He's put together a very well-detailed schedule of values, which shows you clearly the expense that would be incurred if they continue down this road. And keep in mind that the $1.2 million in renovations that we have estimated at this point, there's probably still going to be more expenses incurred as they go through this building and find more things. Most of this relates strictly back to the economic hardship section, so you'll see there. If I can kind of fast forward to tab 6, that's going to be photographs of successfully renovated buildings by this owner in this neighborhood. So if we go all the way to tab 6, and we can look at that now, you can start to see that he has a dedication to historic preservation and has done everything within this community to bring back the context and fabric of this neighborhood to its once more substantial point. Those are just two of the houses nearby. As we go through, we have documents showing the existing floor plans of the building. We've taken the liberty to go ahead and draw those. We've also designed a conceptual layout of what will fit on the property, meet the context of the neighborhood, and also meet the current code standards. So that means meeting all the setbacks, meeting the height restrictions, meeting the floodplain designations. We also have letters of support as we go down. And then we get to item X, which I think is a critically important part of this. So as we get to item X, which is Exhibit 16, it talks about the rehabilitation timeline and communications. If we could just quickly kind of look at that. I know that Ron was involved in this project, so over the course of 2 years working with Soul Design Studio, they went through extensive efforts, trying their best to rehab this building. We've already talked about the expenses incurred, and that doesn't even include the carrying costs of the loan of this property for nearly 2 years. On top of that, once we got to a point where it absolutely made no sense to continue forward and look at another option, it's been about 10 months since we've been involved specifically in the project. So another 10 months has been spent there. We've studied the site. We've designed conceptually a building that will match the context of the neighborhood, and we think that that's a good fit and a good solution for this situation. Going back to the timeline here, if you're looking at Exhibit 6, these first few pages are pretty critical. You can start to see where things started to unravel as new things were discovered, whether it was a foundation or a pier that was twisted or falling. As we went through the building, you start to see levels of deterioration, including termite damage, which is to be expected, but extensive termite damage, water damage from leaks. Also, probably most importantly, it appears that there was probably multiple fires in this building. The reason we say that is there's evidence on the west side of the building of fire and also on the east side of the building of fire. There's charred areas of structural members. There's charred areas of stairs. There's charred areas, just about everywhere. The second floor is in fairly bad shape. The first floor also has evidence of fire damage there as well. There's a ton of photographs, which maybe we can come back to, but for right now, I would like to hand this over to Kevin Kemp to speak to the structural portions of this.
Good evening, my name is Kevin Kemp. I'm with Wilson Structural Consultants. My name is K-E-V-I-N. So with regards to the structural report and observations that were made, the damage is extensive, and it's both isolated and global, if you will, as far as the extent of the damage. So the way we approached this was to basically start from the top and work down. As has been mentioned, the roof had significant fire and termite damage. Approximately 20% of the roof planks of conventional framing, ledgers, and ceiling joists had apparent damage. The second floor wall framing, there's significant damage that would require removing wall framing and previous porch beams to provide new continuous 2x6 stud framing and headers over window openings. So a significant number of windows didn't have headers over them. That would require replacing actually installing headers. And then the wall framing was discontinuous, which basically in a wind event would create hinges in the wood framing that wouldn't withstand hurricane wind forces. About 60% of the exterior lap siding exhibited damage due to exposure to elements and termite damage. Along with that, you can basically say that the nailing for all of these lap siding would have been showing signs of corrosion just due to the exposure that it had occurred and lack of maintenance and upkeep over a considerable period of time. On the second floor, the joists and deck boards had various types of damage, either where they were notched maybe for electrical or plumbing over years, to fire damage, to just missing planks on the floor, and again, termite and water damage. There's a rim board on the east side of the house that is about 25 feet in length, which is discontinuous and portions are damaged. First floor wall framing, starting at the back of the house at the northeast corner, extending to the west side of the house, sill plate is damaged and discontinuous, and in some areas not connected to the rim board. Again, this is a sign of just lack of structural continuity that would need to be addressed in order to provide adequate lateral support for shear loads. First floor joist framing, the floor framing on the north side of the house and at the center of the house shows signs of termite and fire damage. And then the foundation piers, there was one obvious foundation pier that was damaged and appears to have rotated. It almost seemed as the house may have started to lean a bit due to settlement and poor support from the foundation, as well as an additional report that was done during the Soul's involvement, which exhibited even further damage to the piers in the surrounding areas. So in conclusion, over the course of many years, the exposure to natural elements, termite, and fire damage have left this historic contributing structure to incur significant costly structural damage. In order to repair what we presented as localized damage needs to be considered from a global perspective to appreciate the time, effort, and expense, as well as life safety risk required to repair and return this residence to be safely occupied. For instance, replacing wall framing or repairing sill plates will require significant shoring to the existing roof, floor, and wall framing. The repairs will require strategic and time-consuming planning to ensure the safety of the workers and preserve the wood framing that is to remain. Finally, it should be noted that the damage that was observed and recorded in this report was only that which was easily visible at the time of our inspection, and it is our professional opinion that additional damage to the structure is hidden behind wall and soffit, sheathing, floor, and deck boards. It's our professional opinion that the global scope of the work presents a significant danger to a contractor and that due to the extent of damage, the house should be raised and rebuilt as a structure consistent with the period of design which the home was built.
We're going to look at Exhibit 10 quickly. So what we've shown here is, again, we've taken the limitations of the setbacks of the site, the scale of the existing building, and developed schematic plans, both three-dimensional but two-dimensional, of course, for space planning layout purposes, to try to see what we could do before we, go down this process. Is this lot going to allow itself to actually build something on? With the current restrictions, the corner lot, it does squeeze down the building quite a bit. So in doing so, the owner will actually lose a bit of square footage, but at the end of the day, he's going to have, I think, a much better and safer building, obviously. So kind of turning through, quickly here, we have also, if you look at page A101, this is on 2 lots, actually. So the main building will, of course, be on the 203 Burn, which we recognize with a dilapidated building. But the site to the northeast is also a portion of this parcel, and that's where all the parking will occur. This is very schematic, and we just wanted to demonstrate for you that we have clearly in mind the intentions of designing and completing something in a fair amount of time, hopefully in just a few months. I know we'll go through this ARC process again, but it's clearly our intent to continue down this path and design something that will fit perfectly within the context of this neighborhood. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go to the final tab, tab 17, and kind of just go through some of these pictures so you can kind of get a little bit better understanding of the current status of the building. So with the very first picture with the Everbuilt on it, we're looking at the exterior rim board, which at some point has been modified. You can see a nailing pattern on there, which doesn't meet any normal structural engineer's nailing pattern. You can also see, if you look closely, the sole plate is kind of warped, and that's probably what's causing some of the walls to be leaning. It's kind of leaning to the left-hand side. As we go through, there's another picture on the second page with that Everbuilt weather resist barrier that's kind of demonstrating the same thing. Right as you walk in this building, right through the front door, you see a little bit of evidence of fire. Not a lot, but there's a little bit of charring right there. That was one indication that kind of said, hey, this is on the first floor as well as the second floor. Let's take a closer look around. So the next image is another image of the lower floor. And you can see some charring there. Some of the floor joists, as you can see, have termite damage. So some of these are in need of replacement. As we flip the page again, I don't know if you're looking at it, but what I'm looking at right now is more floor joists, but they're very charred from one of the fires. Can I go to this?
Yes, yeah.
Do I need to push anything to
No.
activate it?
Just use the hand mic.
You don't have to touch it. Yep.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Thank you. So in this image here, you can kind of start to see these boards right here this one, for instance, has about 1/3 of it gone on the exterior. The next board down, and I'm going to flip the page to get a little bit closer look at it, is in really poor shape. Less than half of that 2x4 is remaining on an exterior wall system. This is also, for the most part, this is a balloon framed building. So these studs go from the ground floor all the way up to the roof level. Hopefully you can make this out. If not, you can probably see it in your document there. The extent of the deterioration of those studs is pretty substantial. The next image, I just want to show you there's existence of evidence there of more fire damage. Again, now we're still on the lower level looking up, and you can see fire damage there, as well as in this view. Hopefully you can make this out. Again, all these floor joists here have fire damage. They're all charred, some of them pretty substantially in this area. These are all different areas. These are not just the same area where I'm taking multiple images from different views. These are all different areas where there's fire damage. Over here, now we're on the west side of the building, which is very close to the property owner along that edge. Again, more fire damage in another area. Obviously, you can see these 2x are in pretty bad shape. There's nothing left over here. Here's some internal stairs that actually lead up to the rooftop. You can probably see in here that these stairs are in really bad shape. Both the risers and the treads are all completely charred. Here's just evidence of a lot of the rot, whether it's from termites or whether it's from water damage. Here we have a major structural beam at the floor level that is very well rotted out. Now in this situation, you might look at this and say, wow, that pier is in good shape. But it's the beam I'm looking at in this image. That beam is in really bad shape. Again, this beam here, as you can see on this edge, it's pretty well eaten up, very badly damaged. As you look out, now we're looking at some of the pier foundations. In this image, you can see it's missing bricks that have fallen off over the years. Again, this is that same pier. Again, missing bricks, missing bricks. It's crumbling pretty badly at this point. This is a different pier, different location, but similar situation where a lot of the bricks have fallen out. There's not really much there that's holding this thing together at this point. And that is actually the same pier that we just saw, just from a lower level. As you can see, it's in pretty bad shape. So we're looking at this, holistically, from the foundations to the roof. And what we see is we see foundations that are in very poor shape throughout. We see also multiple structural beams that are in bad shape. We see walls that are in bad shape. We see the framing around the windows is rotted. There's water deterioration. There's termite damage. We look at the balloon framing as it's meant to be to hold this load all the way to the roof, and we see damage at a lower level. It really causes some concern. There's also where the building is leaned to some degree, which Kevin had mentioned. You can see, and we don't have a good photograph of it here, but I'm sure it's somewhere in our documents, where the floor joists are actually pulling away from the beams. So somebody's come in there and just kind of stuck some plywood in there to kind of make it up. But when you got a gap between your floor joist and your beam, that's pretty concerning. So we feel strongly that this has outlived its lifespan. To rehab it, we have estimates, and the owner's made a very concerted effort to rehab this building, just like he's done with other buildings in the area. But a cost of $1.2 million to rehab this is out of line, I think, with any reality. I'm going to hand this over to Phil. Phil Lindsay would like to speak.
You could also use the other mic is on the other side, the other podium.
My name is Philip Lenzen. It's Philiplenzen. And one of the other things that, that Sean and I have done when we first began working with this project with the owners is we really did another effort of looking to see how we can rehabilitate this building, even though it's gone through sole design before. And it quickly became apparent that, that the owners thought of how to proceed was probably pretty accurate. We immediately became in touch with Ron, and we were very open with Ron, going over how we were looking at rehabilitating it. However, we're running into more and more roadblocks. One of the things that we also did is we met with Spanish Town Creek Civic Association. We were very open with them about what we're going to do. We met on site with the association. And one of the things that they were, while they were walking through it, they also saw this as a building that they felt was going to be a little difficult to move forward with, and they agreed that that rehabilitation was not appropriate only because of the extreme costs, you know, the heroic efforts to do that. As a matter of fact, they're the ones who suggested that we contact Wilson Structural. And so we've also been really open with them, just kind of going over what we're proposing to put there. And we've gone through a couple iterations, modifying a few things to make sure it fit with what they would like in that neighborhood as well. And the last iteration we gave to them, they were satisfied. And so that's what
Eric Page again. I was brief before and I'll be brief again. Just to kind of wrap it up, I kind of felt like we might have been over-inclusive with information, but at the same time, I understand that this commission is not in the business of approving demolition. That's not what anybody wants to do. That's also not what my client, our client, wanted to do. A lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of effort to try to renovate this building has simply hit a dead end. I think, you know, I believe there to be competent, substantial evidence on all the elements for this commission to consider. But I think one of the most important things to point out is Mr. Kemp's report, and he read from a little bit of it when he was up here. This is an unsafe building, literally to the point where the recommendation of the structural engineer is don't send anybody in there to fix anything, because you don't know what's going to happen next. That's not a building that you relocate. That's not a building that is economically feasible to rehabilitate. You're talking about $1.2 million, and again, a structural engineer saying, in our professional opinion, there's more as we peel back the layers of this onion. The economic hardship here, in addition to $1.2 million, my clients invested $155,000 in trying to rehabilitate. They wouldn't throw that money away if they could rehabilitate for anything that was economically reasonable. Just, it wouldn't make any sense. And the last thing I just wanted to point out, as I'm watching Sean flip through pictures, that fire damage was not done when my client owned the building, just so we're clear on that. They purchased it in June of 2017. There were no fires in the structure. That fire damage, which is extensive, is seen when you start to pull back walling and such, and dig into the guts of the building, which they've done and found it to be unsafe. So with that, I will conclude, and any of us are happy to step up and answer questions when that time comes around.
Thank you very much. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Velam, staff with Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is complete and in accordance with Chapter 27, 116F, 1 through 3. We do have 3 letters of support that are in the record. As they went through their presentation, I checked off the bullet items that we had concerns with. On starting on page 3 and then moving to 4, deals with the 12 sections of the economic hardship. They've addressed B and D thoroughly this evening, but I believe that their team needs to address the other 10 items just to put it on the record this evening. There is a section in Chapter 27, 116 that addresses any salvaging of any materials that are left behind if the demolition is to move forward, and that item should be addressed as well. I will be here to answer any questions. That concludes my portion. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the public hearing to any public comment. Anyone would like to speak either for or against? All right. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move to now the commissioners can ask questions about the project. I have one quick question for staff before we begin. Do we need to put into record the booklet that was given to us?
We received and filed one earlier, and we have one for the file that is retained in the office.
Okay. Thank you. Well, before we, I guess, the commissioners ask questions, staff did suggest going over those 10 additional items on the staff report. Didn't know if you wanted to go through those quickly, and then after that, we can continue with questions.
So on the staff report, again, we have this listed in the same order as the staff report, I believe up to M on our list of exhibits. So that's what we're gonna kind of go through now. So item A, estimate of the cost of the proposed demolition. If you turn to tab 1, the cost of the demolition with a construction manager that has been working on the project previously is at $16,900, and that's all inclusive to demolish the building. So that answers that question. B and D, I think we've addressed pretty handily, so we'll go to the estimated market value of the property. C, which is tab 3. So this is the appraisal with the property, which is a pretty big document, but the bottom line is the appraised value is at about $600,000. So item E, for the amount paid for the property, the owner paid $595,000 on June 30th, 2017. For F, if the property is income producing, it's obviously not income producing, hasn't been for many years. In fact, the records go back to show that this building has been vacant for 15 years, well before our owner ever purchased it. In fact, the previous owner purchased it as a vacant building. And as far as we can go back, 15 years ago, it's been vacant during that time frame. The remaining balance on the mortgage, item G, the loan balance is $357,000. The annual debt service is $31,000. These are all, again, included in this document on page 12 of the front end of this document. All appraisals obtained within the previous 2 years. Again, that goes back to our appraisal, which is tab 3. Any listing of the property for sale, it has not been listed for sale over the past 2 years. The owner purchases in 2017, and throughout that time has mostly been attempting the rehabilitation of it. The assessed value of the property records, the property appraiser website demonstrates that the assessed value is $447,000. The real estate taxes paid over the last 2 years, $8,711, $8,660. Respectively. The form of ownership, the property is owned in fee simple by Piney Woods, Florida, the 7th LLC. And then any other information to assist, and it lists as an example pro forma financial analysis. We have that on tab 5. And that's our pro forma. Now, obviously, it's not being rented, so this doesn't make any sense until the fact that if this were able to be rehabilitated, that's where their numbers would be. But obviously, that's not realistic. And in fact, the new building, the square footage will be much smaller, so his return will be, substantially less. I think that answers all of those questions.
At this point, do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions? Commissioners?
I do, but I'm sorry, I lost track of where I was. Commissioner Sutton?
I have no question at this point in time.
I'll just try to wing it. I noticed in the appraisal from 2017, the images of the property before any deconstruction, investigative, demolition was done to the property. What instigated the removal of all the finishes? Because all the photographs that we've seen regarding the damage, the structural, it certainly looks like most, if not all, of the interior finishes were removed, including the flooring, the ceiling, and the walls. And then there's a tremendous amount of the exterior that's been opened up as well since the owner purchased the property. So what instigated the removal of all the finishes?
So that's a great question. We were not involved in the early portion of this, so I can't tell with 100% certainty why some of those things happened, but I do know this, that the previous architect had a lot of difficulty meeting actual building code. So part of the interior portions of it were that they needed fire separation because there was 2 offices and 2 apartments above. So part of that was you can't, the existing building didn't meet code, and we were trying to maintain a level of historic preservation while at the same time creating 2-hour firewalls. So that was a portion of the interior. I think the exterior was primarily because it didn't meet building code because of energy conservation and things like that.
Gotcha.
So I think that's why they started peeling it back. Obviously the weather barrier is shot. No insulation in this building was built in 1902 in a lot of instances. Some of these existing walls. So some of those things had to be brought up to code. The siding was in very poor shape as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Any additional questions? Okay. I have no additional questions as well. The applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Sorry, we forgot one thing. I just noticed that, talking about the salvageable materials in the building. So currently, what would be available is any of the non-rotten and usable siding that is historic, as well as all the existing lumber. So a lot of the lumber from the old really hard pine is pretty valuable. It's original 2x4 dimensions and original 4x 2x8s and all that. So that can be used in other buildings or used as for other purposes. And some of the bricks can be reused from the fireplace. Other than that, there's not much left. One of the things that had happened in the past is there were several remodels in the building. So a lot of those existing finishes were not original when they started rehabilitation and started doing selective demolition. And the one thing that's kind of interesting that's still there is there's a fireplace mantle that's still there in the little hearth, but even the mantle is a modern mantle, so they had already removed most of the anything that would be contributed.
Thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay. At this point, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will now discuss the case.
Before we discuss it, Ron, the 3 letters that I have supporting, 2 of them are the exact same ones.
The 2 that were submitted,
Joanne and Don Ferlita.
those property owners have 2 different properties in the immediate vicinity, so we.
Understood, got it. See it in the one paragraph. Thank you.
Would any of the commissioners like to discuss the case?
Well, I I certainly can understand from the photographic evidence, what, they're up against. It's kind of sad to peel the onion and see all that, but, I really don't have any concerns. I wish there was more that they could bring forward, either into the new building or into other properties, but it appears there really wasn't anything left when you look at the appraisal imagery that we have available in the document that was presented to us today.
I think you're absolutely correct. In many respects, I think this property exhibits a fairly classic example of a rapid deterioration through, not necessarily neglect, but by virtue of it being vacant or underused for well over a decade, and Lord knows how many different generations of renovations it's had before that. What's left of the fabric is what we see in the photographs.
Right.
The termites didn't get it, the water and fire did. There's not a whole lot left here to work with. In practical terms, $1.2 million plus for renovation, basically replacing one of everything, because there's nothing left to keep.
I agree. I really feel like it's just form and porch and those sorts of things.
Well, that's a different issue entirely. We do have enough of an indication in the photographic record of what was here as part of the grand old Hyde Park fabric. And I'm wondering if one of the things we might want to consider doing is having some of this photographic record brought forward in the future through a future ARC proposal for new construction on this site, as a compare and contrast what used to be here and what they are proposing, and not necessarily how closely they are coming to match with it, but how closely they're coming to terms with the scale and feel of what was here at one time.
That's the application for certificate of performance regarding demolition.
Understood, thank you.
Any additional comments? Okay. Would a commissioner like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition for ARC 20-387 for the property located at 203 West Vern Street, in as much as the agent has satisfied the requirements of Chapter 27, Section 27-116F of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Commissioners, moving to our next case is ARC 20-442. This is for the address of 1704 West Chaton Avenue. This is also in the Hyde Park Historic District. The primary structure was constructed in 1917 and is deemed contributing. The zoning classification is RM24. There is requested an addition of approximately 1,300 square feet with an accessory structure detached of 243 square feet. The request for a certificate of appropriateness is twofold. They're going to request for a variance to the east side yard setback from 7 foot to 3.5 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutters, and for a new accessory structure, and in addition to the primary structure. As I stated, they have two parts to this request. We're going to ask the agent to deal with the variance first. We're going to put 10 minutes for the variance request. They have responses on page 5 that are associated with the variance, so you could follow along. And just briefly, going through the photos, starting with the Sanborn map. Excuse me. North is up. Primary structure is shaded in the green box, which faces Chaton. To the west, you have Fremont. To the east, you have Rome. Hyde Park Village would be to the northeast. As a point of reference, there is an alley that runs to the rear of the property, but will not be addressed this evening. This is an overhead shot that kind of brings into focus the surrounding properties. This is the parcel in question here. Once again, you have Chaton, you have Fremont, and then Rome Avenue to the east. This is a front elevation with a side access for the vehicle. This is looking down that drive aisle. Towards the rear, they have some trees that kind of challenging on the site of what they could do here. Looking at this east elevation, this is a high-end craftsman style home, has a lot of unique details. You see the little bay that pops out here with a shed roof on top. Looking a little closer at that area, you see how it has this detail on this bay, how the lumber comes together. Also, you see here the implementation of the siding to the trim. You see a feature window here. Moving to the other side. You see the lap siding and then the shadowing of the casings around the windows. You have this trim board up top with the knee brackets. And this is the rear elevation. Moving to some of the features. You have this unique gable venting here with your knee brackets piercing through the fly rafter. This is another gable end and how that's treated with some shake shingle. On top of the columns, you have the heavy brackets, and once again with the outriggers piercing through the fascia. To the corner detail, how it terminates very close to the earth, and then you have this weave. It's not a miter, but it's every other member kind of laps over. This is the non-contributing structure to the east. This is the abutting contributing structure to the west, and then to conclude, directly across the street, you see some more period fabric. And at this time, Mr. Hadley will address the board.
My name is John Hadley, and I am representing Drew Newman and Ariel Peters, the owners of 1704 Chaton. I work for Rowe Architects. We are a second-generation architecture firm here in Tampa, serving the Tampa region and Florida for over 50 years. We do projects of all scale, sizes, typology, but one of our specializations is historic preservation architecture. We've done projects for University of Tampa, University of Florida, the city, really projects and buildings all over the state, really too many to count over the 50-year course of our history. As a brief introduction for Drew and Ariel, Drew Newman and his family have been Tampa residents since 1954, when Drew's grandfather moved the family business from Cleveland to Tampa. And that family business, and I'm going to go ahead and show, if you could make that live. The family business is the J.C. Newman Cigar Company, which continues to operate out of a historic 1920s cigar factory, the Regensburg factory in Ybor City, which is a contributing structure to the historic landmark district in Ybor. And this is another shot of the front. It's a beautiful, iconic building with the clock tower, and we've been lucky enough to be involved with a rather large renovation project ongoing for the past 2 years at the factory, both inside and out. And the work associated with this project in this building qualifies for the National Park Service tax credit, historic renovation work. So all of the work complies with the Secretary of Interior standards. And I'll just say, if you get a chance to go to the factory, it is an unbelievable space, unbelievable building, and you get to see cigars made here in Cigar City in Tampa. So the variance request, starting off with that, is associated with a porte cochere that we are proposing for the side of the house. Drew and Ariel, simply put, desire covered entry at the house so they can unload kids' car seats, groceries during kind of Florida inclement weather that we all know. As you're well aware, porte cocheres are common features in craftsman-style architecture. Oftentimes, as you see here as this precedent image, they connect directly into the front porch off the side. Another precedent image here at 803 South Packwood. It similarly connects into the side, and oftentimes they have a ribbon driveway that pulls through all the way to the rear of the house where an accessory garage dwelling unit, or accessory unit exists. Or alternatively, the porte cochere could be pushed back to align with the front of the house instead of the front of the porch, as is the case next door at 1706 West Chatham. So Ron already kind of showed, I'll show again. This is the corner of the existing house and the driveway we're proposing to put a porte cochere, and showing the site plan. I'm going to go a little quickly, but just stop if you want to dwell on a particular image. So is there a way to kind of zoom out slightly? No? Okay, well, so the front of the house, the porte cochere, we're siting it here, and what we're doing is we're going to push it back to align with the front of the house, the primary frontage of the house, similar to what's happening next door. And that allows for stacking of 2 cars. We would extend the ribbon driveway just slightly enough to accommodate that second car, but we're also trying to avoid the grand oak that is further back in the property. We've pinched the width of the porte cochere as much as is reasonable, given the vehicular clearance that's required. And it's worth noting that I'll get into it later on when we talk generally about the project, but there is part of the existing house is non-compliant with this side yard setback, and we're going to be taking that down and bringing that into compliance. So as much as that is a kind of a mitigating factor, I'd like to point that out. So another factor in how we cited the porte cochere was how you tie into the existing roof line. So this is a shot of the existing roof. You have the porch with the ridge running north-south, the main roof structure ridge running east-west. And so we are proposing to plug into the roof line in the same way that this bump out further back plugs into that existing roof, like so. So this is the proposed porte cochere. Like I said, it aligns with the front of the house. We're using detailing that is consistent with the original historic house, the brick, exposed rafter tails, the eave brackets, and ultimately we felt like this was just the most sensitive way to go about to give them their covered entry and do what we could to kind of mitigate its effect on the overall front facade of the building. So at this point, I'm going to review the statement of variance hardship that Drew and Ariel submitted, and I'm going to go ahead and just read it verbatim in their words, if that's okay. Number 1, and should I go ahead and read the whole kind of preamble? Okay. Yes. The alleged hardships or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other property structures or buildings similarly located. And the response is, presently, the house lacks covered access to safely move between the house and a car during inclement weather. We have a 6-month-old child and hope to have additional children in the future, and we're worried about the safety of moving them between the house and a car during lightning and heavy storms in the rainy season. Number 2, the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from actions of the applicant. A self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify a variance. The response is, the lack of safe means to move between the house and a car in bad weather is a pre-existing condition. Number 3, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere with or injure the health safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by allowance of the variance. And this is true. The variance will not affect the neighboring property owners. Instead, it will improve the health, safety, and welfare of our young family. Effort was made to minimize the Portico share's encroachment into the setback. Number 4, the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. And we would answer that the portico shares are very common in Hyde Park. The proposed portico share was intentionally designed to be consistent with those found throughout the neighborhood, particularly the one next door at 1706 West Chaton. The proposed portico share uses historic detail found on the existing house. Number 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by this chapter and the individual hardships or practical difficulties that will be suffered due to a failure of the board to grant a variance. The response is, because the proposed variance will not negatively affect neighboring properties or others, the health, safety, and welfare benefits of providing a way to safely move between the house and a car in inclement weather would result in substantial justice if the variance is granted. And finally, number 6, the variance, if granted, will allow development that is consistent with the design standards and compatible with the historic pattern of development within the historic district, historic conservation overlay district, multiple property designation, or the locally designated landmark or landmark site in which the subject property is located. Because the portico share are common design elements in Hyde Park and the proposed portico share is designed to be consistent with those that are existing, the proposal is consistent with the design standards and pattern developments within Hyde Park. And with that, I'll turn it over to the commission.
Does that complete your presentation for the variance?
For the variance, yes. Should I pause here or should I keep going?
We're gonna move on to the staff report now for the variance, and then we'll come back later.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. The staff is silent on variances. It's a finding of fact with the information that was provided. Mr. Hadley, if you could put the site plan on the projector for discussion purposes. After there's a vote on the variance, the certificate of appropriateness can move forward. He has different drawings showing the engagement of the portico share if it's were to move forward, and then he has some drawings with it removed as well.
Thank you. At this point, we will open the public hearing to any public comment. Seeing no one. The commissioners will now ask questions for the case for the variance only.
So the property next door, you had an image of that portico share, right? Could you put that up really quickly, please? Just next to the site plan is perfect. So it appears both on the site plan and the image there that the portico share next door does come right up to the property line.
Yes.
Do you have images of any other portico shares on this street as well?
Not on the street.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't mention earlier, but this is where the side yard setback variance is being requested at this. It was just tough to kind of get it in there, well, impossible really to get it in there and meet the setback requirement. So that's.
So you're asking from 7 to 3'6" for the structural element, and then 2 feet for the eaves?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And just, excuse me, Kamari Pettismack from the City Attorney's Office, just for clarification from staff, is it 7 to 3.5 or 3.6?
3.5 feet equals 3 foot 6 inches
Okay.
is what they're referring to.
Okay.
And then for the overhangs, it's an 18-inch overhang to break it down is what he's asking for as well. 1.5 feet.
Oh, yes, I get you.
Okay.
Yep. I have no other questions, sorry.
Commissioner Sutton or Commissioner Boyd? Any
I
questions?
have no question.
Where do the homeowners enter the house?
The main entry is up the stairs here, and the front door is approximately here. There's an existing back door, and we're, as part of this project, we'll have a new back door, but that's, the front door is about right there.
So would it be correct to say that even with the proposed portico share location where it is, it doesn't really cover the steps? Or does it?
I think with the roof overhang, you would have partial coverage, but not full coverage.
Okay. And then did you look at any other configuration or location for that portico share? I know you talked about, you showed examples of it in the front. You're showing an example of it kind of set back, which is, maybe a typical thing to do for, a historic structure with a portico share that's added on later.
We did. It was kind of going back to the roof, that as you can often, appreciate in working with historic buildings, especially with different roof layouts, it's about how you plug into it sensitively. So, by pushing it back even just a little bit further, you can appreciate how that would be a challenge for flashing up against the existing house. Already, you can sort of see how this was done as sort of precedent against this bump out roof here. So we would kind of be mirroring that and doing a similar condition. But, pushing back too much further, then you really begin to kind of muck up the architectural language here. And again, going too far back, you run into the tree. But then we did want to be sensitive to that, which is why we didn't pull it all the way forward. But as far as coverage, you're absolutely right. That would be ideal to have it aligned with the porch.
Okay. Commissioner Sutton, any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay.
What is the width between the existing house and the proposed columns for the portico share?
Yeah. It's about 8.5 feet. I asked the owner what kind of car they plan on having. Right now, they're residents of New York City, so they don't own a car. But I think we wanted to be reasonably tight, but also reasonably, realistic about giving them flexibility. I think it's safe to say that the one next door, it's pretty tight there. I'd say it's about between 8 and 8.5 feet. So you're not fitting a minivan there. It's probably more realistically like a pretty small sedan, and we'd be very similar to that width.
I have no additional questions.
Any additional questions?
No.
Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal for the variance.
I'm done.
Okay. We'll close this portion of the public hearing, and the commissioners will now begin discussing the case. Is there a commissioner that would like to begin?
Yeah, I'd like to start, please. This proposed portico share, I have a problem in how it's configured to achieve the purpose that it's actually intended to do, just to provide cover, entry from a vehicle into the building. It seems kind of divorced from where you park a vehicle, get out, do whatever business you are, and then another path to get into your home, which is exposed. That gives me some thought that although a portico share, especially in the Hyde Park area, is not an unusual feature, it is certainly not universal. And typically when you do see them, at least under original construction conditions, fully integrated with its architecture as well as its site. It's fitted. Very rarely do we see a situation where an original portico share, like the building next door, is in an entirely different location with respect to side yard setbacks. Perhaps at the point in time, the teens and the 20s, when many of these things were being built, the nature of where you place an accessory structure was not as tightly regulated as a main structure as the house itself. These days, we don't have that much of a luxury. So I'm having a hard time justifying, one, the encroachment of this structure, and B, the ineffectiveness of this structure with respect to the intent of a covered entry.
Well, the second point I do agree with. The first point, I think there's so many variations of There's so many variations of, prior to our modern zoning laws that where you do see accessory structures and porte cocheres and, even side porches and stairs encroaching on what we today would consider our side setbacks. So that for me isn't a great concern, but the issue the hardship mainly is that it's about providing covered access. And so if that's truly the reasoning for this, then I would expect that it would engage more with that pathway. So that for me is, but in terms of the variance request before us, I don't have any really conflicting issues with that.
Okay. Commissioner Boyd?
That's my biggest conflict is it's a finding of fact argument, and the argument is that they're requesting covered access to the entry of their home, which I'm not sure is being fully provided, but the porte cochere itself, I don't take any opposition to.
Okay.
Well, do I have an opportunity to respond? Or?
Right now, the commissioners are just discussing the case. Sorry. I would tend to agree. I have a mixed kind of feelings of where if the hardship is to provide a sort of a covered entry, I don't know if what's being proposed meets it. Now, that doesn't mean that can't be kind of designed if we allow it to meet that. But that's just my opinion.
So I think historically, this style allows for that within the district.
Mm-hmm.
You can find examples with and without it. So to say that they're not meeting some sort of historical precedent, I think it's in the district. And I think the fact that if they indeed want to have that access for a vehicle, whether or not it needs to shift forward, which is where
Right.
I think all of our opinions are aligned in that. Considering modern cars and clearances and things like that, I'm not so sure that there's enough space for them to push the columns back and allow that 7-foot setback that we require today in our zoning to allow them to have a modern car next to the house without infringing on the structure of the main structure.
Yeah, I agree. I have no issue with the porte cochere.
Okay.
I'm not sure how much issue I have with meeting the 6 criteria for the hardship.
I agree because that is listed as the main sort of, and heartaches there.
Yeah.
I agree.
Are there any other discussions the commissioners would like to discuss? And if not, would a commissioner like to make a motion for the variance only?
So do I have an no? Okay.
No, unfortunately. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Did you need me for something? I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
you're good. Thank you. Anyone like to make a motion or would like to continue discussing the case?
And this is just for the
Variance.
variance.
Yes.
I have a question, maybe. If the variance is denied, can they return with a different design and request a variance again?
There's certain criteria that they would have to meet, and that will be discussed with staff. There is a timeline that they are prohibited from bringing forth a variance request unless staff determines that it's significantly different from what was previously submitted. But again, that's going to be up to staff to make that determination.
My issue is really the verbiage of the continuance, not so much the,
I'm sorry?
I'm going back to discussing with the
Okay.
commissioners.
I would agree. For me, I mean, I think that the notion of it is fine and what the intention of it is, but
Because this is based on a findings of fact, I agree.
yeah.
So unfortunately, I'd like to propose, if everybody is ready to entertain a motion. I move that the variance request for case ARC 20-442 for the property located at 1704 West Chaton Avenue for a east side yard setback from 7 feet to 3.5 feet with an encroachment of 1.5 feet for eaves and gutters be denied due to the failure of the petitioner to meet the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria as set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances, specifically that the alleged hardships or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other property structures or buildings similarly located.
Madam Commissioner, if I may, Kamaria Pettis-Napple from the City Attorney's Office. I think you need to provide that it does not meet the hardship criteria. You just stated that it does.
That it does not. Oh, I'm sorry. That it does not. Well, it doesn't. I write it here. That it does not meet the hardship criteria number 1 per the ordinance section.
Is there a second to the
I
motion?
will second that motion.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
At this time, he's ready to present the rest of the case, and this is for the certificate of appropriateness, minus the porte cochere.
So, to begin with, I'd like to stress that Drew and Ariel love this house because it is historic and because many of the historic features, both on the inside and the outside of the house, are still intact. As far as we can tell, there have been very few owners since the house was built in 1915, and they've been looking to purchase a house in South Tampa and Hyde Park for some time and have been generally disappointed that many of the houses have been altered in significant ways. So this house, both on the outside and inside, had some wonderful, beautiful detailing that's still intact. And Ron already kind of pointed out many of the features, but I'll do it quickly again. The exterior wood windows seem to be in very good shape. Most of the glass is still intact. A few panes are cracked, but we will replace those. The existing brick piers supporting the porch and some really nice brick detail. The siding is really pretty stunning. This is at a 45-degree angle, so you kind of have that really nice overlap detail there. The gable end with the attic vent, really nice detail. And then the eave brackets as well. And the tapered skirt for the siding, and this is where you can see what Ron was pointing out, which is the alternating lapping that's happening. So coming back to the site plan, the proposed site plan here, I'll begin by generally kind of walking you through the scope of the project, which involves an addition on the back side of the house, which is expanding the primary bedroom, expanding the kitchen and a living space back here. And then the second component is a new second story for two, 3 bedrooms and a bath. And I'll get into more detail later on, but we are proposing a one-story extended family residence also on the property in the backyard. Looking at the existing floor plan right here, I'd like to point out that everything from here forward through the porch is remaining intact on the outside and inside. We're going to be refinishing, restoring the wood flooring, the trim, etc., but largely remaining as is. The kitchen is where we're going to be expanding that and to the rear, and then the existing primary bedroom, as far as we can tell, based on the 1915 Sanborn map, is not original, and that's the only part of the building that we are proposing to take down. And this is just as kind of a diagrammatic image of the demolition scope here. So the west, north, and east facades existing to remain. This is an image of the roof plan, and it gives you a sense of how we're tying into the existing building form. On the lower level, single slope roofs shedding to the rear, and this is where we're expanding back into the backyard. And then this is the second floor addition that I spoke about earlier. The concept behind the second floor addition is to really play off of the idea of the sleeping loft that is so common in craftsman style houses throughout the neighborhood. As you're aware, they're very common. The concept is that you have, this is just a precedent image, that you have a kind of pop-up on the second floor that allows for cross breezes to make sleeping more comfortable. And typically, the volume of the second floor pop-up is pinched in from the primary structure down below, both for the roof and the walls. So in this instance, you have the roof of the sleeping loft running parallel to the roof of the main house below. Or it can run perpendicular to it, as you see here, another example in Hyde Park. But same concept. And this is across the street, a similar feature. Reads more like a dormer, but same idea. And then this is next door, the 1704 residence. And so the scale of this is much larger, but it's the same concept. You kind of glaze as much as you can all the way around. This, in fact, runs parallel to Jeton, opposite the north-south axis. So this is the proposed north elevation of our project. So this is what is going to be facing the street. Flatten that out. And you see the second floor addition. The gray is existing, and the kind of mustard color, that's the existing color of the house right now, but that's just to set it off from the existing. And you see how we kept it as concise as we could and as low to the existing roof line as we could. And this is the east elevation, and this gives you a good side shot of kind of the massing of the proposed addition. So on the first floor, you have single slope coming back, kind of breaking up these masses to help kind of break down the massing of the addition. Beyond the primary bedroom, single slope up, and it terminates at this second floor pop-up here. And you can see how tight we kept it. This is flipping to the west side. Again, that primary bedroom, terminating on the two-story volume, up above, and the stairs to get you from first floor to second floor in this bump out. Now, I'll come back to these if you want to look at them again, but I'm going to keep going. And then this is the view from the backyard. And as you can see, they're interested in installing solar panels on the south, that south-facing roof. But that's not visible at all from Jeton. The wall section is very typical and consistent with the existing house. We're going to be matching the roof slope. Asphalt shingles, exposed tongue and groove wood soffit, the exposed rafter tails matching the existing depth that you see on the building. Cedar wood siding matching that profile, the width of the existing siding. Either double hung or single hung wood windows, the 1/1 configuration to be consistent. And that siding comes down in that tapered skirt to grade with the foundation behind it. So that's the main building, and now I want to dwell for a moment on the extended family residence that you see here. The logic behind its siting on the property is, even though the driveway doesn't continue all the way to it, it's on that access and acts as a terminus to that sight line, to again harken back to that kind of accessory garage that you might have seen back in the day. And as a kind of precedent conceptual idea, it'd be very similar to this: one-story structure, simple gable form, with a larger kind of glazed sort of opening reading back to that garage opening. And that is our proposed extended family residence. So this is the view that you would see as you look down the driveway with that. But in fact, the opening to the unit would be on the west side facing the yard. But using all the detailing that you see on the primary house in the historic house. So this is a three-dimensional image of the project. So you can see that I went ahead and took the porte cochere out, but you see the second floor addition above, the sleeping loft. Most of the addition is in the backyard, and then you can kind of just see the extended family residence beyond. And this is a view from the backyard looking. As far as materials on the outside, all the materials would be consistent with, the goal is to complement and not compete. Stained mahogany door with a dental detail, glazing above, simple, pretty classic hardware, streamlined, but again, in keeping but not competing. Wood-clad windows, again with that same configuration that you see on the existing. And then if exterior lights are required, then something simple, elegant, along with the project, or the house numbers as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to the commission for feedback.
Thank you. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff for the Historic Preservation. Staff's finding that this application is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines. We had some concerns early on in the project with the overall massing, and once he got into the project, how much demolition would have to take place with this moving forward. And that was with the introduction of the porte cochere. So that east elevation won't be affected as much now that the porte cochere, at least in the form that was presented this evening, is not moving forward. On the west elevation, we had addressed with the agent to revisit that. The vertical access to the second floor eats into a defining gable detail on that side. I thought I was going to see something different this evening, but I had not, so I believe the agent's ready to address that this evening as well. And then the last item is that the detached accessory structure is going to be used as a special use that has to go through a zoning process, and if this is granted approval this evening, that's still a process that's outstanding. And then lastly, the foundation, you saw some of the pictures, how the skirting comes all the way down or close to grade. That's what I wanted to show in some of the pictures that we provided, how he's addressing the foundation on the addition portion of it. That concludes my portion. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this point, we will open the public hearing to any public comment. Seeing none, commissioners will now begin asking questions. Commissioner would like to begin.
Would you mind just going ahead and addressing the west elevation that Ron spoke about?
Yes, Ron, we did talk about that, and I wasn't ignoring Ron. I really kind of wanted to get in front of you and get your feedback, but internally we talked about ways to address it. So this is the elevation that in question, and I think that we studied this, and I think the simple solution that I hope would address concerns would be if we really kind of just drop this portion of the roof down just enough to allow this gabled roof form to be expressed more purely. And because it's the stair, you shouldn't have any headroom issues there. But if you go to the rear elevation here, then that form then gets mirrored right here, and this whole roof then drops down like that. So we've gone back and forth on that. This is kind of where we landed, but that's thinking ahead. That's how I would address that.
Can you put up the floor plan that goes with that to understand that relationship and plan as well, please?
Yeah, I have the site plan.
You do not have a floor plan that?
I'm sorry, I do not have the floor plan. But I will tell you that the stairs,
You did have a floor plan.
I had the existing.
Okay.
Come up this way.
Do you have any additional information on the solar collectors?
I don't. It's going to be a learning process for me, but the plan is to put whatever kind of equipment is required next to the existing electrical panel and keep it as discreet as possible out of sight. It's on the back of the house, so I don't see that being an issue. Fortunately, there's just absolutely no sight lines from Jitan to the rear there.
And where is that electrical panel now?
It's not shown in these elevations, but I believe it's, I don't know for a fact. I don't even want to say and mislead you.
So some of those collectors and the solars, because there's not a lot of solar panels on this, some of that equipment can be relatively large.
Mm-hmm.
And it's either wall mounted, or if it is, on kind of a floor, it starts to become a slab and kind of stuff. Do you think that you'd be able to, if it's showing on this elevation, the ability to put it on that elevation and it not be seen?
I think we could. It would be really just a matter of locating it as far south as possible. So, the sight lines from Jitan this way are really cut off by a bunch of trees located right here. So you would have to get pretty much parallel to it and look all the way back to be able to see it.
Okay. I have a question about some of the window sizes on, I think it's the west facade.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if it's just maybe the angle of the renderings or the elevations, or if it's just actually different. So you have the kind of the primary windows, the little bit larger ones that are 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
So on the existing building, 4 out of the 5 for what we're seeing here are all the same size. And then the new one looks like those 4 windows are different sizes. And then you take into account a smaller, that smaller window. And then kind of as you go around, it seems like the window sizes are all varying, and some match the existing, some don't. Was there a strategy on, which window sizes that you matched and kind of why versus what they are?
The strategy was to match. I know that these stair ones are different, but these ones off the primary bedroom, they wrap around and they would match the sizes of the existing ones on the east end. I would have to go back and double check to see if these do in fact vary as much as we show them to the east ones. But that's a good point. It really was to match the sizes of these windows as you wrap around.
But that begs the same question, though. Though they match when they go around, it's all part of your addition. The question really is being, why are they not matching in scale and scope of the original construction? You're going through so much trouble to match so many different features. Why aren't your windows from the same aspect ratio and same size?
That's the intent, that they would. That they would be the same size.
But they're not being shown as such.
On the east elevation, they are.
Can you put the east and the west together?
Sure.
Like that? And can we zoom out the camera, please? Can we zoom any further out? I guess that's the most.
Because it does look like on the east facade, you have those 3 new windows do match the 2 that are directly to the right of it. But then on the bay sort of portion, or that first bay window, that window does seem larger. And again, I don't think it's perspective, because I know it's kind of coming out, but that first window on the left for the bay area does look larger, and it does seem to match the windows on the west facade. But then it's hard to tell. It seems like the height of the windows on the east are higher than what's on the west.
Do you have the imagery that we had from the staff report that you could put up there from the existing house?
Sure. Sorry, I have a bunch of papers.
I think sometimes what happens is it'll happen in the different features of the historic components that they vary.
Like even, I know he's going through quickly, but there's a image right there of that front kind of 3D view without the portico share.
Yeah,
That first window on that east facade looks taller,
higher too.
but then if you look at some of these photos that are in our staff report,
Yep.
the subject property east elevation, that looks like it matches.
Yeah, the sill heights here and the east elevation that we have from staff report are the same height, but you're right, in the rendering, they're varying their sill heights.
It seems like the sill and the head heights for all the windows just kind of move, and I'm sure that might just be the drawings, but just making sure that the intention, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that the sill, we could align the heads, and, I mean, that would be more consistent with the original, as these heads come around. If there was any discrepancy, it was, by a few inches here and there, and I'm
That's
not, that was unintended.
And then besides the drawings that we've seen, do you have any additional details for, trim around the windows, the knee brackets, anything like that?
The intent is to match the existing, so, I mean, realistically, my drawings will be pointing to the existing with a photograph on my drawings and say, verify in field for these dimensions.
Okay. And then for your back porch wall that you have, I'm assuming is the intent to match the wall that's in the front?
Talking about this one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so you would have the same, sort of the cap on that wall would match kind of the cap that's on the front as well?
That's right.
And that's true for the column as well. It looks like you're trying to match the front porch to the back porch.
Yes.
I would like to address an item on your site plan, please, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I do not recall, but could you please point out where your intended location for air conditioning equipment is?
I apologize for not showing that. I'll tuck it right back there.
And that would be for the whole of the house and as well as the addition?
Probably 2 units.
And is that going to be screened in some fashion?
Yes.
What would be your method of screening? It's not identified.
We have not discussed that.
Okay.
Whatever would be, it would be in compliance with design guidelines.
Would you consider having in this same area whatever necessary equipment, mounted equipment for your solar array? I think this entire area that you're proposing for your utility yard, if you will, or your utility area, needs to be resolved in some
Okay.
fashion. What's going there? How big? How well is it screened? How do you access it? Because we have no indication of how that's being handled right now. And related to that, I see that there is a notation for an existing wood fence on the site. I noticed that on the very south property line, and it goes around to a certain degree. Could you explain to us how this runs, how it is being terminated, and if you are making any additions to this fence?
That run, I believe it just starts right here. I'm not sure if it terminates at the property to the east. It does not come back to the, well, there is a gate right here that would get terminated. I mean, demolished. Currently, we don't have plans to put a new fence and gate here. The existing fence runs this way, around, and then, you know, I believe it terminates just like that, and we would leave that in place.
With respect to your driveway, your proposed accessory structure, as well as your backyard patio, deck, and stair arrangement, do you have any pavements planned at this point in time for walkways?
We have not gotten into site planning yet like that.
That is also, I think, an incompletion in this part. Tell me, I want to backtrack one more step. The fence that is identified, that fence, is that contiguous to your client's property, or are these fence elements contiguous to your neighbor's properties?
I'm not sure.
You are not sure. Thank you very much.
I'd actually like to turn the attention to the accessory structure. If we could please look at the elevations that you presented, and then if you could please label them so that I understand where they're actually oriented.
One moment.
And then you had a three-dimensional rendering that showed the accessory in the distance. Do you have one that shows what we'd actually see down the drive if there were no gate there?
Yes, I think I do. Hold on.
Well, I can ask another question. With the site plan there that you have your hand on, you said that that would align basically with the drive that exists, correct? So the center line of the doors on the north, or the windows on the north elevation would be right there. Okay. Can I look at the elevations again, please? Thank you. Do you have information on what these windows are? Do you have like a cut sheet of what your intent is?
The intent would be Windsor Pinnacle wood-clad windows. But I don't have a cut sheet on the exact configuration here.
Okay, so when I look at these look like they're fixed windows, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes,
And they're true divided lights, or are they applied muttons?
we had not discussed that yet.
Okay. And then on the west elevation, can you pull the site plan back off? Okay. And those are French doors with full lights. Okay. I have no questions at this time, no further questions.
Are there any additional questions from the commissioners for the addition or the accessory structure?
No.
Commissioner Sutton?
I have no further question.
Commissioner Klausmith?
In regards to the site plan, is the alley active behind the property, the main structure? It is.
Yes.
Can you pull the site plan up? Do you have that bottom condition? Okay. So currently, they have no access to the alley from their property? Okay.
For the accessory structure, we only see two of the elevations, so is it safe to assume that the other two elevations are just blank walls, no windows or anything?
That's right.
Okay. All right, if there's no additional questions for the applicant or staff, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it. I think that you raised some, good questions, some points that clearly need to get looked into a little bit more on our end. But generally, thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you. At this point, we'll close the public hearing and the commissioners will now discuss the case. Commissioner Sutton, would you like to begin?
Oh, thank you very much. Overall, the general direction of your design intent, as well as its appearance, the flavor, is going in a terrific direction. I think you and your people have paid serious attention to what the existing fabric is of this house, and have gone through quite a bit of gyration to fit these details within the overall plan of these extensions, and as well as the roof racing for that matter. I think this is a classic example of a very extensive building renovation where, although it is not necessarily required, having your schematic floor plans would have been of a great asset to the discussion, so that when we have questions of why is this door here or why is this window here, we have that indication as to what it's conforming to with how you plan or how your clients plan to use the various rooms that are being either added or renovated on the inside. That's just a point. But I think, alluding to one of your closing comments, I'm wondering if this schematic proposal that we have in front of us is entirely ready for prime time. There seems to be a number of different elements that are wholly unresolved at this point in time. Point brought up, windows, window sizes, head locations, sill locations, its relationship to the existing building. AC equipment, solar equipment, where is it going, how's it being handled? Pavements, I mentioned that, the fences. And of course, my fellow commissioners could probably add a few more different items. One, it totally escaped my mind. The idea of lowering that portion of roof or changing that roof configuration over your stair so that it mitigates its roof massing with the rest of the building. all of these things are great ideas to massage, but right now, we don't see the final product, at least on a schematic design level.
I agree, and I also want to commend you. I do feel like this is almost there, but not quite. I think the accessory structure needs to be revisited in terms of how it's presented to the public. Even though there might be a gate there now and one proposed in the future, gates get open, sometimes they get removed, and that structure will be there longer than the fence or the gate, more than likely. So look to historic precedent and look at what other things have been allowed in the district. And then for me, the stair tower and how that resides on that elevation is a huge concern right now, and I don't feel comfortable with it proceeding. So there was something else I was going to say, but I concur with all the points that you brought up, Commissioner Sutton.
I'm literally thinking that, you know, for the benefit of this project, that if it works well, time schedule wise, in terms of our working calendar as well as their working efforts, whether a continuance might be the way to handle this.
Yeah.
Commissioner Boyd?
I might disagree a little bit. I think all of our big hitting items are well taken care of and appreciated, like all of the scaling, the massing, the relationship between the new and the existing structure I quite appreciate where they're at. The details, like where the electrical panels or solar panels are located, just sort of doing that final check that the window sizes are consistent with the existing structure. And then I think the applicant came having received the feedback from staff with a plan to mitigate the stair tower roof concern. So overall, I think the project is in a really good place. There are items that need to be addressed before it moves to the next step, but I feel fairly comfortable with the project.
I'm kind of on the fence, so I understand the idea of there do seem to be a lot of things that are open. I think I do have some concern about the primary structure, similar to what you mentioned, Commissioner Claus-Smith. So I do think that does need to be revisited. I think the stair, kind of that west massing to allow the roof line to kind of show a little bit better, I think that could be handled in the sort of the direction that you have so far, I think works. I think the window sizing, I think that's probably just maybe an exercise of, going out there and measuring and kind of figuring where things are and then making sure it reflects. I think the intention is to kind of match all of it, as you mentioned, which, in an old building, maybe the windows do kind of fluctuate from one side to the other. I think a lot of the materials and kind of the palettes that you've illustrated have been presented to us, besides maybe the trim, which I think if you have a detail for the trims and the kind of the brackets, I think that would be there. The one thing that I am a little concerned about is a lot of the drawings in the presentation that you presented today is more of a three-dimensional kind of drawings, which I think helps a lot for us kind of seeing the massing of the building, but there aren't the typical line drawings that we would see, and it is one of the points for the conditions from staff report is I think some of that could help us see some of the relationship between the front elevation with the primary structure and then the accessory structure. Some of the different elevations of kind of showing where kind of a nice clean line, what's new and what's kind of existing. That's not purely three-dimensional, because if you look at those three-dimensional kind of elevations, it is that perspective. So things aren't perfectly straight, which, never truly are. But I could see both directions of kind of each side of it, so. Any other comments?
One other thing I remembered what I wanted to say in addition to the commending you on the direction. One thing I'd like to point out is that when you look at historic properties and you look at their front porches versus their rear porches or even their side porches, often the language will go from a more formal sort of characteristic at the street to a less formal, graceful kind of condition. So, just a thought there that maybe it doesn't need to be so heavy. Because for me, I feel like it's a very heavy space for a very small space that you're affording the owner to sit in the backyard in a covered porch location. That column is just taking so much space from them. And then the idea of an opaque wall, knee wall, I can think of many properties where that's much more airy and light. So, and you have a really nice sort of trellis condition that looks like you're trying to give them. So, just some thoughts there about offering them something more in their backyard.
Whenever I see a back porch like that, I keep thinking the really, really old school kitchen porches. Where, that's where, sometimes during the year, that's where some of the kitchen prep was going on. That's where you made your ice cream. That's where you shucked your corn or your oysters or whatever else. It was a messy place, and it was meant to be in the back of the house.
So I have no other comments.
Okay. Would a commissioner like to make a motion?
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing, ARC 20-442, for the property located at 1704 West Jeton Avenue, with the following conditions: that zoning approves the accessory structure for special use, the solar collectors and required equipment are approved by staff, the electrical panels, solar equipment, and air conditioning equipment are screened from street view, that the window sizes are verified and sill heights and sizes are consistent with the existing structure, and that the roof line is modified to maintain the gable as discussed at today's public hearing, as well as the opportunity to revisit the back porch. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that the scaling, proportions, and materials are consistent with the guidelines.
And then before we vote, do you understand the conditions that were added? And then can you just go on record saying that you understand them?
I do.
Okay. Do I have a second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
Okay. So because we have a tie, it's going to be continued. And the next available date for the hearing would be?
December 7th.
Okay. Will
I would like to move to grant a continuance in case ARC 20-442 for the property located at, 1704 West Jeton Avenue to the December 7th, 2020 public hearing at 6 p.m.
I second that motion.
all in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, sir.
Good.